Today we're going to talk about flower parts and the importance they play in the population and growth of plants and new plants in a garden setting. We're in the Master Gardener garden at the Santa Rosa Extension Office. We're going to step inside and take a closer look at some of these plants. Now that we're inside, we're going to take a little bit of a closer look at some of the flower parts. We're going to cover the ovary, the sepal, the style, the stamen, the petal, the anther, the filament, and the receptacle. And a lot of times I'll just refer to it more as the stem, and we'll cover that piece as we go into it. We're going to shift from this and go straight into looking at some of the flowers and things that are out there. There's quite an array that we have, and even some that I picked up at a nursery, all the way down to this big one that I brought in as well, the lily. So we're looking at a passion flower, a black-eyed Susan, a rose, and a lily. So let's move from there and discuss two of them, the rose and the lily. Now that we have the lily and the rose out and separated from the other flowers, we're going to look at several things real quickly. We're looking at the sepal. This is the outside section of the flower bud as it's forming. That keeps it tight, keeps a lot of insect diseases potentially getting into it. Also enclosed right inside there, when it opens, you see the petals. Like I'd mentioned earlier, the lily is a little bit different. It actually has an outside section piece that a lot of times will turn white and resemble the petals themselves, but the outside one is the sepal as well. So from here, we're going to actually dissect and take a little closer look at the internal parts of the flower. Now you can see I've dissected a pretty fair amount of the plant, or the flower that is. I took apart and cut off the sepal and then the petals to expose the more inner workings of the flower itself. You're really looking at, there are two parts. You have the filament and the anther that also contains the pollen when it matures and releases. That's the male part of the flower. The female part of the flower actually contains the stigma, the style, and the ovary. And this is the area where the ovules are inside this area, where when the pollen releases, either by insects crawling through it or wind dispersal and moving between separate and different flowers, the pollen winds up on top of the stigma, creating a tube going down the style, and it connects and fertilizes with the ovules, and this is where your seeds develop. Right below it is the stem structure that also has a receptacle component which contains and supports all the female and male flower parts, both feeding and also giving a little bit of energy and a little bit of support. In review of the flower parts again, I placed them on a little diagram to just review. We have the petal, the sepal, the anther, the filament, stigma, style, ovary, ovules, and that's a slice, a dissect of the ovary, the stem, and you can barely see how small that pollen really is, from the bees to other pollinating insects, and even wind dispersal move it between the flowers. So just looking at it a different way is just looking at it like this again. So I hope you enjoy the activities that are upcoming.